Surviving your first winter in Clanfolk is one of the biggest challenges in the game, and preparation is key. In this video I'm going to be explaining the 5 big things you need to prepare for winter. First of all, your Clanfolk will need shelter. That means 4 walls and a roof. Early on you don't have access to many wall types, so I suggest using daub walls for your first buildings because they have low flammability and they're not ugly. To unlock daub walls, you'll need to use a stone hoe to gather clay. Building daub walls requires clay, branches and straw, but those are all easy to get in the early game, and I suggest that you use straw to make your roof. When designing the shape of your shelter, make sure it's large enough to include all the beds for your Clanfolk, a heat source, and perhaps some extra space for items that don't like being outside, like food. You need to consider which heat source you're going to use, which brings us to the second thing to consider: warmth. The earliest heat source you get is the cooking fire. This is not the ideal warmth for inside, as it needs a non-flammable zone all around it, but if you are desperate, this is the rough shape of a room which uses a campfire for heat. Note that the beds are on the side away from the flames. If you are using a completely non-flammable wall like brick, you could put the cooking fire in a corner to save space, but for daub walls this is the best arrangement. The second heat source you can unlock is the peat stove. To unlock this you need to make clay brick and clay tile at a kiln. This is my preferred heating method because it is efficient, so it will heat a large area, it doesn't throw sparks so nothing will catch alight around it, and it doesn't emit much light so your Clanfolk won't get the too bright debuff when sleeping in the same room. The downside is you'll need to harvest peat bricks from a bog and dry them on a peat stack to use as fuel. You'll need to have the peat stack under cover somewhere where the rain and snow won't touch it. This is the shape of a room you could build to use a peat stove for warmth. The third heat source is the stone fireplace. To unlock this you need to make iron ingots at a smithy. This is many people's preferred heating method, but it requires a few adjustments to the room shape because it emits a lot of light and it also has a flammable area around it. This is the shape of a room that is blocking the light from where the Clanfolk sleep. The fireplace doesn't heat as effectively as the peat stove, so depending on the size of your room, you may need more than one. If you have multiple rooms you want to heat, you can use vents to circulate the heat around so you don't need a heat source in every room, but remember that bigger spaces may need more than one heat source. The third thing to prepare for winter is warm clothing. Early on, the most effective clothing you can prepare for this is fur cloaks, hats and tunics. Fur does have a debuff to move for wearing it, but it's worth it to keep your Clanfolk warm. To unlock fur clothing, you need to kill an animal that is not a rat or a chicken. Slowly over summer and autumn, you can hunt rabbits, foxes or deer and turn the hides into dry hides to make into fur clothing. Remember not to hunt too much at once because you likely won't be able to use all the meat before it spoils, and you may negatively affect the wild population of that animal even to the point where they may leave the map. If every Clanfolk has a fur cloak, hat and tunic by winter, they should be well prepared for doing tasks out in the cold. In later years you may want to work on wool or leather clothing for winter, but fur is probably the best you'll be able to source for year 1. The fourth thing to prepare is food. You'll need at least 10 days of food to get through winter. The easiest way to get this is to gather mushrooms in late autumn and dry them. Another good way is to smoke meat, but smoked meat doesn't last quite as long as dried mushrooms. Don't prepare raw or cooked food for winter as those won't last long enough. You can't use eel traps in winter, but you can fish and hunt to a certain extent. Be careful with hunting, as if you send your folk to hunt something far away, they may not make it back before they collapse from the cold. So it's best to concentrate on mushrooms and smoked meat prepared in advance. The one exception to note is that during winter anything left outside or in an unheated room will freeze, so it will not spoil. This can be a good way to make your first freezer room, but I don't recommend relying on leaving food outside as it will degrade if it is snowing or raining. The fifth and final thing to prepare for winter is water. During winter, all the lakes, rivers and ponds will freeze, so Clanfolk can't get water from them. It's therefore important to prepare in advance by making clay jugs at a kiln. The kiln is unlocked after making charcoal in a charcoal kiln. Try to make at least 1 jug per Clanfolk. Then in winter you can use a campfire, fireplace or kitchen to melt a jug of ice into water. If you advance in the idea tree enough, you may even have time to make a well. The water in a well won't freeze, so Clanfolk can use it without having to melt ice. but they'll still need the clay jugs to move the water around. To unlock a well, you need to craft your first stone block and a masonry. If you prepare these 5 big things, surviving your first winter in Clanfolk will be easy. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing.